Hello, this is another video in the Wellness series brought to you by Rimby and Pinoca Neighborhood Place. This video is on supporting your partner, bringing positivity to parenting and relationships. One thing is for certain, there is no one right way to create a family. A parenting partner could look like a lot of different things. It could be a current spouse or romantic partner, a former spouse or romantic partner. You might be aided by your own parents in your parenting role. You might be aiding your own children in their parenting role. Aunts, uncles, other relatives, friends. A parenting partner is anyone that supports your role as a parent. Parenting is challenging. There's no formal preparation. There's no class we go to learn how to become parents. New parents experience numerous changes and constant changes in their own individual identities when children come into our lives. Adding the role of parent really makes us look at who we are as individuals, and it sometimes ends up being difficult to remember who we are as individuals, our own desires, needs, hobbies, pastimes. These sometimes get lost in the shuffle when we become parents. And that's why the relationship of co-parent is so important. And that is another thing that can constantly change due to shifts in employment, household duties, and our personal values. When a new mom is expecting a baby, her family members, her friends, even her work colleagues all rush in to support that new mom. All different sorts of showers, diaper drives, books are given, videos are given. There's lots of support there, or hopefully there is. That's actually not that true for men. There might be congratulations, there might be some cigars, but there's very often not that rush of support, that encouragement for that father in his new role as a dad. And because they're not experiencing the pregnancy the same way as mothers are, fathers don't actually quite realize the impact of a new baby until that baby arrives. Sometimes that lack of support can result in a lower confidence in their role as parents, or it might look like that dad seeking time away from the home where they do feel confident, where they do feel valued. So this is something to keep in mind when children come into the home, to understand that everyone does need to be supported and everyone needs a support network. This is abridged from the Gottman Institute Bringing Baby Home program. This is the sound relationship house theory, and this is some pretty interesting stuff. Dr. John Gottman is a researcher, and through the research and observation that they did with many couples over decades, they could show with a 94% accuracy which behaviors would result in the breakdown of the relationship and which relationship habits would contribute to marriages and couples staying together. This relationship house model, the foundation is trust and commitment. Then we have building love maps, and we'll talk about that. Sharing fondness and admiration, turning toward instead of away, having a positive perspective, learning to manage conflict, making the life dreams come true, so understanding what each other's goals are, and creating shared meaning of happiness and commitment. We're going to go on to talk about this. Managing relationships involves learning behaviors that contribute to healthy relationships. Now, what Dr. John Gottman discovered was that when couples maintain their good friend status, they turn toward each other rather than away, and that's actually really important, and we'll talk about that more in the next slides. Handling conflict in gentle, positive ways. That means, to the best of our ability, assuming that people mean well, assuming that people have the best intentions for themselves and for the relationship. Not to say that people will agree all the time, that doesn't make any sense and it's not realistic. But when couples are able to repair negative interactions, when they have a sense of we-ness instead of focusing on me, that's very, very important. And when couples are able to effectively share and discuss negative emotions with each other, these skills, being able to turn toward, being able to have a positive outlook, being able to understand that it's not who wins, it's we win or no one wins. It really is very interesting because these things predict the success of the relationship. And the lack of them can contribute to what the studies show, the breakdown of the relationship. Just like with children, play is important for adults too. The first three levels, the bottom of the sound relationship house, focus on friendship, focus on fun. Quote here, a relationship without play is a relationship without humor, without flirting, without games, without fantasy. We all need humor, laughter, and play, adults and kids. Romance is play, banter is play, talking is play. Bringing a spirit of play to whatever you are doing. That is so, so important for that spirit of we, that funness, that adventure that we all crave. We all crave a sense of variety, and it is up to us to bring that. It's not any one partner's relationship to do that. It is a two-person responsibility, and that friendship within the relationship really deserves it, really deserves to be nurtured, to have fun, adventure, new activities, new shared experiences. That's how we keep it fresh. Now, what is a love map? Now, this is part of that sound relationship house that involves creating a roadmap, a guide to our partner's inner world, to their needs, to their wishes, to their goals, to their pet peeves, to their hurts. Now, here's a question. Have you ever expressed a pain or an irritation that was ignored? How did it feel? I bet that didn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. When we have a partner, either a romantic partner or a friend, who ignores or is unaware or isn't willing to make a roadmap of our inner world, of our needs. Not saying that other people are responsible for our feelings, that's simply not the case. But when we are pair bonded, either in a relationship or in a friendship, we do have a bit of responsibility to learn the needs, wishes, and comfort of the other person. On the flip side, how does it feel when someone really knows you, when someone hears you, believes you, but also assumes the best of you, gives you the benefit of the doubt, or alters their behavior in order to stay within or out of your boundaries, those boundaries of your love map, of your inner world? Fondness and admiration. Now this looks a little bit different for every person because we all have different love maps. We all have different, we all have different values, and we all have different expectations and needs in how we are loved. Now, what does fondness mean to you? It could be showing physical affection. It could be words of affirmation. It could be quality time. It might be those just the kind words, but it might be romance, it might be gifts, it might be physical touch. Everyone is different, and we sometimes are still learning that for ourselves. And sometimes those maps veer off course during our life. We go in a different direction, and that means our love language or our love map will change a little bit. And that's part of the adventure of relationships too. Admiration is about respect, about being willing to acknowledge and show gratitude to our partner's abilities, attributes, gifts, personality, humor. What makes you feel respected? What makes you feel acknowledged? How do you show respect? How do you show your partner that you acknowledge and appreciate their personality and what they bring to your life? Now, what does this have to do with parenting? Well, parenting partners, whether they're romantic or not, have a relationship. And in that relationship, the respect of someone's boundaries, the respect and acknowledgement of someone's traits and attributes, that is part of this sharing fondness and admiration. And it's really important for children to see their parents sharing fondness, admiration, and respect. Because what we show our child's parent builds that child's self-esteem. Our children identify with us on a very deep level, a level that is so deep they can almost not differentiate themselves from their parents. So when parents show fondness, admiration, respect, and gratitude to their co-parent, whether or not they are in a romantic relationship, that boosts up that self-esteem for the child, and that is priceless. Turning toward and the emotional bank account. What's an emotional bank account? Every relationship, sibling relationship, romantic relationship, friend relationship, work relationship, every relationship has this imaginary but powerful emotional bank account where we make deposits when we do something kind for someone, when we respond to a bid for connection or attention, when we acknowledge someone, when we build someone up, when we show respect. Those are all emotional bank account deposits. Withdrawals, that's something else. Maybe we make a mistake. Maybe we have a sarcastic or hurtful edge in our voice. But if we have enough bank account balance from our deposits that we've made, then those withdrawals don't make as much of a difference. They don't cause harm, or at least as much harm. Humans have bids for connection. A child's bid for connection might be loud behavior. It might be an outburst. It might even be a tantrum. The same thing can happen with adults. It looks different. It shows up in sarcasm. It shows up in acting out, snapping, all sorts of things. It could, though, just be something kind. Be starting a conversation, asking to do something together, go for a walk, a physical touch, a smile. All of these things are bids for attention. It is up to us as a co-parent or a relationship partner to turn toward when we see bids for connection, especially when those bids for connection are kind, appreciative, and full of admiration and fondness. That is the basis of friendship, and it too is the basis within the relationship as well. It's also a remedy to conflict. When we turn toward, whenever we see behavior from our children, our spouse, our friends that we like, when we respond to that behavior, it builds a culture of positivity in that relationship. A positive perspective. Now this again, if you watched our last video on gratitude and forgiveness, we talked a lot about the negativity bias and how it can wreak havoc in relationship and lives. This is the antidote to that, part of gratitude, and really focusing on looking and perceiving our partner's behavior in the best possible light. In other words, giving the benefit of the doubt. Keeping that assumption that people are just doing the best they can. Sometimes that comes out funny, sometimes that even comes out negative. Things will go wrong because we're human and humans make mistakes. But if we're able to really keep that benefit of the doubt and help keep a positive perspective and make repair attempts when we need to, that will go a long way. And again, these studies proved that by doing these and keeping these habits in mind and using these in your behavior towards your co-parent or your spouse can really go a long way in ensuring success of the relationship. Unfortunately, no matter how many videos you watch, courses you take, or books you read, conflict will still come up. And what we know from studies, what Dr. John Gottman discovered, was that 31% of problems can be resolved. That leaves 69% of our problems are perpetual. They might be environmental, they might be personality-wise, they could be other issues, but they have to be managed because they can't be resolved fully. That's why the phrase pick your battles really does make a lot of sense. Now, what this means is that we need to regulate and manage our conflict because we have to live with it to an extent. That means that conversations and communication has to go both ways. Both partners must turn toward. Both partners must keep a positive perspective. That is not always easy to do. And that's why it is so very important to listen with intent to understand. That's why it is so very important to always turn toward and assume that people are doing their best. At the end of the day, what has to be the most important thing is the relationship, and not who wins, not who is right, but that the relationship remain as positive as possible and intact. And again, relationships can look many, many different ways. Friendship, co-parenting, romantic, family, friends, or otherwise. Dr. John Gottman called these 4 behaviors the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And by that, he meant that they are the behavior that bring the demise or breakdown of the relationship. They are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Criticism, the expression of disapproval of the actions or merits of another person. Defensiveness, any behavior intended to defend, deflect, protect, or project onto another person. Contempt, something that communicates that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving of scorn. And sometimes these behaviors can show up in words, in actions, in voice tone, in facial expressions, contempt especially. If you've ever had a death glare from a teenager or seen a look of contempt on a person, it hits right home. Stonewalling is the 4th horseman, and stonewalling might also be known as the cold shoulder or silent treatment. It's hurtful, it is powerful, and it is one of the behaviors that can predict the downfall of a relationship, according to Dr. John Gottman. Here's some antidotes to the 4 horsemen. Using a gentle startup. The habit of accidentally using blaming language, using you language instead of I language, or how we sometimes, going back to that negativity bias that I talked about in our other video, we accidentally ask for what we don't want, and we forget to use language that is positive. A really simplified way of showing this is the difference between don't talk to me like that or speak kindly to me. It's very different, but you're asking for the same thing, but on one hand you're asking in a negative way, and the other hand you're asking in a positive way. Taking responsibility. Every parent, every part in a relationship has a role in every issue. This is the opposite of defensiveness. Not saying it wasn't me or I didn't do it. Everything is we. Everything is communication. Can't be one person. It's always more than one people. Everyone involved has a responsibility to keep that positive perspective. Mutually being aware of our partner's love maps, of our preferences, love languages, their interests, their values, to show that we value their happiness and so that we can feel valued as individuals as well. And self-soothing, self-care. What do you need to make you feel like you? Is it nature? Is it breathing? Is it singing? Is it music, reading, art? Whatever it is that you need to do to accomplish your self-care, make space for that and ask for space for that. And make sure you honor that in your partner as well. Now, this is so interesting. This is a heart rate monitor of a husband and wife arguing. So you can see this baseline right here. This is where they were before the argument happened. Here we go. Someone lost the love map, and a wife said something to a husband that really got under his skin. And this is where an argument ensues. So here's the fight right here, right? That's where the heart rate is. It's really quite high. But what's really interesting is even hours later, it never returns down to the base level, which was right over here, right? Way down here, down at 60, there's a normal heart rate. Even hours and hours later, it's still elevated. That's what happens when we have arguments. And because of the negativity bias that all humans kind of fall into, we accidentally so often will ignore things that are good and even ignore things that are great. But if something hurts us, something gets under our skin, something hurts our feelings, we ruminate on that, we relive it. And that's what's happening here. They might still be thinking about the argument. They might still be thinking about their hurt feelings. And because our brains can't tell time, when we think about something, we're telling our brain that that's happening right now, even if it's already over, even if it's already somewhat resolved. If we focus on it and ruminate on it, we tell our brain that it is still happening. Turning toward involves appreciation. It involves gratitude. Now, gratitude is so good for our hearts and our minds and our health. Kindness, caring, love, compassion, empathy, enthusiasm. Being able to show these emotions and feel these emotions, especially that gratitude, really taking stock on what's going well, noticing what you like about yourself, about your life, about your partner. Our hearts and our brains have electromagnetic fields. Now, the one that comes out from our mind, from our brain, comes out about 2 or 3 inches away from our body. However, our hearts have very strong electromagnetic fields. And when we really focus on our hearts and how we feel about those around us, they can feel it too, especially if they're close to you. And so when we make sure to not show or feel contempt, when we have a positive perspective, when we are honoring and respecting someone's love map, when we are really acknowledging and appreciating someone's attributes and themselves and their role in your life or in your child's life, they can feel it. And so can our children. They notice it. And so that's why it is so important to keep that positive perspective. Now, this might make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it's very powerful. How we feel extends beyond ourselves. We communicate how we feel about someone in our voice tone, our facial expression, our body language. It all is very strong communicative tools. So let's do a co-appreciation exercise. So find your partner or a friend or someone who's willing to be brave and try this with you, and face them and make eye contact. This isn't a staring contest, it's perfectly fine to blink. But I want you to consciously focus on a characteristic, an attribute, a quality that that person possesses that you appreciate, enjoy. Focus on that. Focus on whatever characteristic it is about that person that brought you together in the first place. Remember a moment that you enjoyed together, a moment of humor, of play, a special memory, and really focus on it for 20 seconds. I'm going to keep talking, but please make sure you do this because it really makes a big difference. Share the memory or thought with that person. Share a moment that you played together, that you enjoyed together, that you had adventure together, or humor. These things are important. We get so caught in stress Because as humans, we are problem solvers, and because of that, we notice problems first. Also because of that, we tend to ignore things that are good, that we like, that we even love. We accidentally ignore things that don't need to be solved, and that's quite tragic, really. And that's how we can get caught up with those four horsemen, because we are ruminating on a bad thing that happened last week, last month, 6 years ago. We ruminate on it, and when we ruminate on it, we tell our brain that that's present knowledge, that's happening right now, that is right here and now, when that's very rarely the case. People change and grow and learn, but we have to also allow our image of them to change and grow. And that is part of making space for that growth in our partner and also in ourselves. Supporting your parenting partner really involves us as adults taking stock of what we are communicating in our facial expression, our voice tone, our body language, but also really focusing on that positive perspective. Because the negativity bias states that we will notice or more quickly notice that that's not going well, what bugs us, what gets under our skin, and reliving and ruminating on those things that have gone wrong. That's the negativity bias. It's the default. So it's our responsibility to work on developing and keeping a positive perspective. And that involves playing. That involves positive communication. That involves remembering the good times. It is very, very important. And our children can see this happening too. And so that's why it's up to us as the adults to model the positive perspective, to model sharing fondness and admiration, even if we're not in a relationship that is romantic. It takes work, but the work is worth it. Thank you for joining us today.